The storytelling of Spec Ops the Line is incredible. I realize I'm a bit late to the party, people have been saying it for almost a decade now, but can you really blame them? The game's full of smart dialogue, subtle symbolism, and compelling characters, while telling one of the most gripping stories of the shooter genre. Sure, people have been celebrating this for years, but that doesn't mean I don't get a turn on the Spec Ops soapbox. So while I'm up here, I want to talk about the narrative design of Spec Ops the Line. The core of Spec Ops narrative design follows a three-part structure. Conflict creates choices that have consequences. It's simple in theory, but its execution is the difference between stories driven by characters and players and events that just happen to them. If you aren't familiar with Spec Ops, the premise is this. The city of Dubai has been plagued by unnatural sandstorms. The USA 33rd Battalion stepped in to help, but quickly lost all outside communication. Months later, the US military picks up this distress call.
Colonel John Conrad, United States Army, has the evacuation of Dubai ended in complete failure. Death toll, too many.
Playing as Captain Martin Walker of Delta Squad, it's now your mission to confirm the status of the missing soldiers and report back. Monster sandstorms aside, the premise of Spec Ops isn't unusual for the shooter genre. I'd argue a team of American soldiers at odds with a foreign power is routine at this point, if not cliché. However, it's been used so often because it's easy to understand and great at getting players invested in the action. Which brings us to the first section of Spec Ops narrative design, the conflict. The conflict of Spec Ops the Line subverts what most players have come to expect from military shooters. First, you aren't acting in defense against a foreign enemy. While their intentions are noble, Delta Squad and the 33rd are the invading force here. Second, foreign troops aren't your main antagonist. While your first few fights are against Dubai's insurgents, Spec Ops quickly swaps them for your fellow Americans as the primary enemy force. Third, the conflict isn't black and white. While it's hard to tell what's been tougher on Dubai, the sandstorms or the 33rd, you aren't gunning them down because they've suddenly turned evil.
Bradley, you got any gum?
Here you go. Last piece.
I don't want to take your last piece, dude.
Take it. Stole it off Benson anyway.
Oh, well, fuck that guy.
No kid.
You know, with all the shit going on, I forget how beautiful this place can be.
I feel you.
You know, sometimes at night I'll just come out here and sit. Just listen to the wind.
Yeah. Reminds me of how the wind used to howl through the trees where I grew up. Kind of peaceful, actually.
Hard to believe there's any peace in a place like this, huh?
You gotta look for peace no matter where you are, man. Helps remind you what you're fighting for.
Yeah, true that. Anyway, thanks for the gum. I'm gonna go check upstairs.
Anytime.
As if that wasn't conflicting enough, it turns out the insurgents you fought earlier are actually being led by the CIA, and they have valid motivations for doing so. This conflict is gray, unfamiliar, and confusing for both players and Delta Squad. It's hard to make sense of what's really going on rushing from gunfight to gunfight, and just when you think you figured it out, Spec Ops asks you to make difficult choices. For the most part, choices in military shooters don't alter the story beyond what weapon you use in a fight. This makes perfect sense for a high-intensity action game where distractions can kill the tension and destroy momentum. Spec Ops the Line is just as linear as any other shooter, and while its choices don't change the plot, they do impact the story. For example, around the midpoint of the game, you're forced to choose between the lives of two men.
The civilian on the right stole water. A capital offense. The soldier on the left was sent to apprehend him, which he did, killing the man's family in the process. 5 innocent people are dead because these 2 animals couldn't control themselves.
I get it. We're meant to choose.
Choose what? Let's get out of here.
Lugo's right. We need to get as far away from this as possible.
That's enough.
Obviously not, because we're still here.
They are guilty. But what is justice? And how would you see it dealt? This is an order, Captain. Who lives? Who dies? Judge these men, or pay the price of insubordination.
This isn't an easy choice, and it's made even more impactful through gameplay. In Spec Ops, you explore the game world through combat, and you make decisions using those same mechanics. There's no dialogue wheel, just moving the reticle and pulling the trigger. By exploring these choices through gameplay, Spec Ops lets players find creative solutions to its moral dilemmas. In this example, you can shoot one of the captives, fire at the ropes to try and free them, or take on the surrounding snipers. Using gameplay gives you the means to create a third option, and it feels like you've outsmarted the encounter by finding a way not to choose, which unfortunately is why the consequences of your choices are all the more devastating.
Kill the prisoners.
Despite the difficult choices Spec Ops forces you to make, you have very little agency over its story, but that doesn't mean your choices don't have consequences. As we saw in the last example, they definitely do, they're just shown through changes in character and gameplay instead of plot. When we entered Dubai, Delta Squad was witty and sarcastic, but respectful of each other and instantly likable.
Hey, Cap! Captain Walker!
What is it, Lugo?
Got a situation, sir.
Mission critical?
No, sir.
Then take it up the chain, Sergeant.
Roger that. Lieutenant Adams.
I hear you, Sergeant. What's your status?
Status is chafed, sir.
You say chafe, Sergeant?
Yes, sir. A local airborne insurgency has infiltrated the U.S. zone designated as my pants. Sir.
Shut up, jackass.
On the battlefield, they're clearly trained professionals just based on how swiftly they take out enemies and how they communicate during combat.
Cover me! I'm reloading!
More coming over the tube! Cover me! I gotta move!
But as the bodies pile up and things continue to go wrong, Delta Squad starts to break down. They grow hostile, causing teamwork and communication to crumble both inside and outside of combat. They're still just as deadly, if not more so, but now they're hateful towards enemies and each other.
This is just fucked.
What are you talking about?
People died back there. Not just soldiers and civilians, but Gould. Our best chance of getting out of this hellhole.
Calm down, Lugo. There's nothing we could have done.
Don't tell me to calm down. We got no idea what the fuck we're doing here.
Yeah, you're right. Putting your faith in Gould, you are fucking clueless. Man, I'm through with this shit.
Fuck you! At least I'm doing my job. You're the one who's fine, just sitting back, waiting for things to unfuck themselves.
You think I like watching these people die, huh? You think I won't carry this shit to my fucking grave?
Stand down! Both of you! Stand the fuck down! The fuck is wrong with you two? We're in the middle of a fucking war zone, and you're fighting in the dirt like a couple of goddamn kids! You are Delta operators. Fucking act like it!
Captain Walker changes the most. Not only does he become more aggressive, but his mental state rapidly declines.
Reloading.
They're flanking us! Adams, watch my goddamn back! That's another one!
His mind can't process the violence, and he starts hallucinating, making it increasingly difficult to tell what's real and what's not.
Walker! What are you doing?
Adams?
You can't do this, man! Stop!
These are the consequences of your violent actions, and regardless of whether you actually had a choice or not, you feel guilty. I know I did. I came to Dubai excited to be the hero, to fight enemies and save people, but things got out of hand and I didn't know when to stop. I kept trying to turn this nightmare around and ended up failing these characters I liked so much. Despite how horrible it made me feel, I love that Spec Ops the Line can do that. For me, being moved emotionally is crucial to great storytelling. There are a lot of different techniques Spec Ops uses to tell its story, but they all depend on solid narrative design. Spec Ops has a compelling conflict that drives characters and players to make difficult decisions that have meaningful outcomes. By doing this while subverting genre tropes, Spec Ops has created a deeply emotional experience that, almost a decade later, we're still recovering from. Hey, thanks so much for watching. So this took me way longer to make than I wanted to, but that's because there's so much great storytelling in Spec Ops the Line that it was just really hard to pick one aspect of it that I want to talk about. So let me know your favorite part of Spec Ops in the comments, storytelling or otherwise, and hopefully by talking about them, we can all work through the emotional scars left by this incredible game.